already know that the credit crisis that's emerged from our largest financial institutions is becoming a credit crunch for small business owners, homeowners, and students seeking loans in big cities and small towns across the country.
Oh, he sounds on top of his game, but regardless of his vocal commitments, President Obama has just put small businesses on the back burner. He recently announced plans to dismantle the Small Business Administration, or SBA, by combining it with the Department of Commerce. Ironic that the government would merge the SBA with an agency that represents the nation's largest corporate giants. Well, it's not just irony. You see, reports and investigations have been surfacing in the last couple of years that have exposed the inside workings of a fraudulent system. What a shock. To talk now about what's really going on here, I'm joined by someone who's been researching this issue for many years, Lloyd Chapman. He's the president of the American Small Business League.
Oh, the first time that I started thinking that Obama was going to close the SBA was actually during the campaign. I contacted the Obama campaign, and they responded, and we talked to him on the phone and got involved in his campaign. And there was a fundraiser for him in Northern California, and I was one of the major sponsors. So I got to talk to him in, I think it was a dining room with about 6 or 7 people for about an hour. And then later on that day, I talked to him again out in the garden, and there's a picture of me talking to him, and he's got his hand just get ready to go on my shoulder. And I said, by the time you're elected president, I will have done 100 radio shows telling people what a great president you're going to be. So I really thought he was going to be the most amazing president, of my lifetime, and I was so hopeful. And after meeting him at the fundraiser in Northern California, he asked me to join the Obama campaign Small Business Advisory Council. And we worked for months on a list of recommendations. And of course, one of them was to stop giving small business contracts to Fortune 500 firms. One was to eliminate the comprehensive subcontracting test program. Of course, the Obama campaign released a statement about how important small businesses were, and most Americans work for small businesses. And the last sentence was, and it's time to end the diversion of federal small business contracts to corporate giants. And they put that on the campaign website like on a Monday. And by Wednesday, they had removed that statement. That's when I started to worry. That's when that's not good.
During the campaign, we heard President Obama, then Senator Obama, get a powerful endorsement from the American Small Business League. At the time, President Obama said small business is the backbone of the economy, and that it's time to end the diversion of government contracts out of Washington to corporate giants and make sure that they go to small businesses across the country. 2 months ago, the Treasury Secretary, Tim Geithner, reiterated that position. My guest today says the president has not only not lived up to that promise, but Lloyd Chapman, the American Small Business League's president, says the president lied.
About a week before the election, it looked like he was definitely going to win. They abolished the Small Business Advisory Council, and they rejected all the proposals we'd spent months working on. And that's when I began to realize he's going to close the SBA. President Obama is going to try to dismantle the Small Business Administration and every federal program to help small businesses, I would say within 6 months. So as opposed to helping small businesses like he should be doing, I think he's going to harm small businesses and federal small business programs.
You think he's going to dismantle the SBA?
I do. 2 or 3 years ago, when Senator Burr came out and wanted to permanently close the SBA and end all federal programs for small businesses, guess what his plan was? Combine it with the Department of Commerce.
New legislation proposed by Republican Senator Richard Burr of North Carolina would eliminate all federal programs to assist small businesses. It's called the Department of Commerce and Workforce Consolidation Act, and it will combine the Small Business Administration with the Departments of Labor and Commerce. So would this be bad news for job creation? Lloyd Chapman is the president of the American Small Business League.
30 years ago, when Ronald Reagan came out and clearly stated his goal was to permanently close the SBA and end all federal programs for small businesses, his plan to do that was to combine the SBA with the Department of Commerce.
On behalf of President Reagan, Mr. Stockman has already mixed it up with the farmers and the military. Today, he defended the president's decision to do away with the Small Business Administration.
And now it's 30 years later, and Barack Obama's come out with the exact same plan to close the SBA, except he's calling it streamlining government. The SBA's budget is 1/10,000th of 1% of the federal budget. You can't streamline government by closing the smallest agency in Washington.
He's claiming he's going to save $300 million a year by combining the SBA and the Commerce Department. In the federal budget, that's peanuts. At the same time, he's increasing foreign aid by $9 billion. That's enough money to run the SBA for a decade. So
If you want to combine agencies to save money, how about the Navy and the Coast Guard? That would save some money, right? How about the Marines and the Army? How about NASA and maybe the Air Force? There's dozens of federal agencies you could actually save a ton of money by combining them because they have similar, responsibilities. But to combine the SBA and the Department of Commerce would be like combining NASA and the U.S. Forest Service. Their missions are completely opposite. The SBA is supposed to represent the smallest businesses in America, and the Commerce Department is supposed to represent the largest corporations in America. And the most ridiculous thing is the Commerce Department represents the very Fortune 500 firms that have lobbied for 30 years to close the SBA. It's just ridiculous. The day before 9/11, Donald Rumsfeld came out and said $2.3 trillion in Pentagon spending can't be accounted for. And I've seen stories that say over the last few years, I think over $8 trillion can't be accounted for. So when you have trillions of dollars unaccounted for at the Pentagon, does it make any sense to close the little teeny tiny agency to help small businesses? Ty Kiesel, Forbes magazine, agreed with me that Obama was really trying to close the SBA when he talked about combining with the Department of Commerce. He said, I agree with Lloyd Chapman, head of the American Small Business League, when he warns this is just another attempt to shutter one of the only government agencies in place to help the nation's nearly 30 million small business owners.
his rationale for trying to close the SBA is to save $300 million a year. Well, that's ridiculous. At the same time he's going to propose to close the SBA to save $300 million, he's going to spend $7 billion to build power plants in Africa, and literally trillions of dollars are unaccounted for at the Pentagon and the Federal Reserve. So it's ludicrous to close the only agency in America to help the 28 million small businesses that create over 90% of the net new jobs for $300 million.
Thinking back on how hard I worked in his campaign and a lot of things he said, it brings back the staggering disappointment that I felt when I saw that he was going to just be the same as every other president and not do anything to help small business and middle class. And actually, I would say if he succeeds in closing the SBA, I think he'll officially be the most anti-small business president in history. It's unfortunate that all the groups that claim to represent small businesses don't, and you can tell by the fact that they're not saying a word about President Obama's plan to close the only agency in the history of America that was specifically created to help small businesses. But I'm going to keep shooting my mouth off in every way that I possibly can. Blogs, press releases. I'm going to try to get back on television and warn people what's going to happen. If they close the SBA, the only agency in the history of America to help the middle class, it'll be devastating to the middle class economy. So unfortunately, I think he's probably going to succeed in closing the SBA. And I think one thing that's going to be interesting is I think you'll notice that no one but Lloyd Chapman and the American Small Business League are going to oppose the move to close the SBA. You won't see the National Federation of Independent Business, the U.S. Chamber, Women Impacting Public Policy, the National Small Business Association, all those groups in Washington that claim to represent small businesses. You will not see a word out of them objecting to Obama's plan to permanently close the SBA. It just proves the American Small Business League is the only legitimate small business advocacy group in America, I think.